Simon introduced me. My name is Jonas Liljedahl, and I am the head of sales and marketing at a Swedish company. We're called Medfield, and we are in the business of diagnosing stroke early in the process. We are situated in Gothenburg in Sweden, and we are approximately 8 full-time equivalents for the time being, and we are an equal number of consultants working for us. We are also listed on the Spotlight stock market. We are in the business of stroke, and stroke is a major problem for the Western world and probably the rest of the world as well. There has been some American studies indicating that for every 10 minutes you delay the care in the stroke chain, it adds 40 days of rehabilitation for the patient. So, early diagnosis is of crucial importance when handling stroke patients, and that is where we come into the picture. We provide a tool that is CE marked since June last year for detection of stroke, no stroke. We can do this with 97% probability, and that is better than the current methods. I will go a bit more deep into that on the coming slides. Well, regarding stroke, it's the second leading cause of death and the third leading cause of disability today. And in the United States, it's the number 5 cause of death and a leading cause of disability. And every 40 seconds, someone has a stroke. And every 30 minutes, someone dies because they were treated in the wrong hospital and thereby delaying the appropriate care. And the incidence of stroke is only increasing. It's expected to increase with 30 to 35% during the time span you can see there, 2016 to 2035. What you do today, today's standard when diagnosing a stroke patient early in the process by paramedics, ambulance crews, or at the emergency rooms at the hospital, you use something that is called stroke scales. You assess the patient according to a scale. There are 8 or 9 scales on an international basis today being used, and they all have different names, usually acronym. The most common one is called FAST, which is an acronym of face, arm, speech, time. You assess face, arm, speech, time at the patient. Then you score the patient, and high scoring means that you can suspect stroke, and the low scoring means that you don't suspect stroke. But there are challenges to these scales because you need to be able to communicate with the patient first and foremost, and the symptoms are not very clear. So a lot of patients today are under triaged. You miss stroke today by using the scales and with the current methods. And as one neurologist told me, the fact that we have 8 or 9 scales today is an indication in itself that no scale is good enough for this job. And if you look at various studies, the sensitivity and the specificity of those scales are only 60–70% something. So you miss a lot of stroke patients early in the process today. And at the same time, you over triage a lot of stroke patients at the other end, making the waiting time for the CT scans at the hospital being a lot longer than they could be, because there are a lot of patients in the fast track stroke chain that shouldn't be there in the first place. So the challenges are, for the ambulance staff, it's not really possible to perform a quick neuro examination, on all patients because of various things. Same thing for the acute care staff. They need to prioritize who is the first patient to be sent to the CT scan, who has the most suspicion of stroke. And these are general challenges and pain points today for the healthcare. This is what the care chain looks like today, approximately. Of course, there are local variation, but you have symptoms, and then you are transported to the nearest hospital where you need to take a CT scan to see if you actually have a stroke. And then a stroke can be one of 2 things. It can either be a bleeding or it can be an occlusion, so-called ischemic stroke for the occlusion and hemorrhagic stroke for the bleeding. And based on what you see on the CT, which is not 100% by the way in itself, you need to be transported to the nearest stroke or trauma center for the treatment. If it's a bleeding, you need neurosurgery. If it's an occlusion, you need blood thinning medicine that will dissolve the occlusion. And then there is the rehabilitation phase. But if we could, there are indications that only 20% of the stroke patient actually gets the right treatment in right time today. Our vision is, I mean, our instrument is visible in the down left corner. If you already early in the process with high probability could tell this is stroke or it's no stroke, you could more rapidly be transported to the nearest appropriate treatment facility, and thereby shortening the treatment time and thereby shortening the rehabilitation time. And this is what the kit looks like. It's the instrument right there. It comes in a bag. There is a tablet PC together with the kit, and that is where all the calculation and all the presentation of the results is taking place. The scan takes about 2 minutes, and we use microwave technology, and then there is an algorithm, or actually there are 97 artificial intelligence algorithm that will calculate the results. We use harmless microwaves. I mean, it will not harm the patient, it will not harm the operator. And it's totally objective because our instrument does not care if you are black or white, if you are female or male, or your social status. There are studies indicating that people from socioeconomic exposed areas are tending to get not as optimal healthcare as they should have. And we all know women sometimes can have different symptoms in various conditions as opposed from males. The system is totally objective. You don't need to be able to speak the same language as the patient. You don't need to be able to communicate with the patient. All you need to do is scan the patient's head for 2 minutes, and then you will get the result with 97% probability, stroke or no stroke. That is what we have CE mark today. We do have clinical trials ongoing because stroke, no stroke, that is only a first basic layer on which we have CE marked the product today. We will extend the functionality to be able for the product to tell the difference, bleeding, no bleeding. And in order to do this, we need clinical data to feed the algorithm, to train the algorithm to be able to detect bleeding, no bleeding. So that is why we have 6 or 7. Not all the studies are listed here, but we have 6 or 7 of them ongoing. In Sweden, in Norway, we have one in Australia in conjugation with the Royal Flying Doctors. And we have a trauma study in Sweden ongoing. And the reason for us wanting to study trauma is that when you have head trauma, you, of course, you are likely to have a bleeding in your head, which is valuable data for us to train the algorithm with. And we also have a trauma study in the UK ongoing together with King's College and St. George Hospital. This is the market, actually, the market development of stroke diagnostic and therapeutic market. And these are actually sad figures, in my opinion, because it indicates that our market will grow, which is, of course, good news for us that is in the business of this. But it also means that all of us participating in these meetings are likely to be parts of this statistic sometime in the future. So I mean, the outlook for the incidence of stroke does not really look good from a patient perspective. The problem is only increasing, so to say. The market as we see it, I mean, we basically see 3 segments. We see the ambulance and the acute care hospitals, which we call private and public healthcare segments. We are also delivering to the offshore industry, the oil drilling rigs out in the North Sea, not in a very big scale at the moment, but we are looking at expanding that, because they also have a remote problem with, there is a distance between the patient and the healthcare facility. Thus, you need something out there to triage patients to be able to make a better decision. And also the cruising and the shipping industry is one segment that we see. The revenue streams, I mean, capital purchase, we have license and license fees and the service maintenance agreements. We also have a consumable. What you can see to the right is a hygiene cover that we need for to use for every patient. So there is a consumable sale attached to this as well. And this is where we are, the development status for the time being. I mean, the CE certification according to MDR was received in June 2022. We started commercial sales and signed our first distributor now earlier in 2023. We are looking at launching this in a controlled way on the European market, but even on more opportunistic markets such as Australia, for instance, where we already are in a clinical cooperation. We will add additional clinical studies will be initiated and ongoing to collect clinical data, and then we will release the improved algorithm performance that can detect bleeding or no bleeding. And this is the performance claim we have. Today, we can distinguish between stroke and no stroke, and we can do this with 97%. The p-value is 97%, and we have a certain amount of over triaging in this, just not to miss any strokes. This is the management team as it looks for now. It's the CEO, it's myself. We have a director of medical affairs that is responsible for getting the clinical data in. The QA/RA function is of course important in a medtech company. You are all aware of that. We have a director of R&D, and we also have a board of directors with these names in it. And that was pretty much it. I hope I made it in time there, Simon. I saw your notification here on WhatsApp that I should speed it up. I try to do that, and hopefully I can wrap this up now in time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Jonas, thank you. Perfect. Perfect. You made it on time. So right now the Q&A session may begin. So, Jonas, first of all, would you please bring back the host to me?
Absolutely. I will stop sharing my screen.
Yes, you are not sharing anymore, and you may find it in. If you click on it, then right. Hold on.
Where am I supposed to click? I didn't hear you quite.
I just reclaim the hosting myself.
Okay, you are in control now. So everything is set. Good.
Great.
Yeah.
Everything is set. Thank you. I let in further people here. Great. Everyone, welcome. I can see first question. It's from Václav. He represents Aspironix here. So Václav, please.
Yeah, hello, Václav from Aspironix here. Jonas, thanks a lot. Really interesting what you guys do, and you know, kudos to what you achieved so far. Congrats on the CE and on the IPO. It sounds really interesting. And you know, more things like this to push the development of healthcare further. So definitely big congrats. My question, I didn't notice it. How long does it take the diagnosis?
We usually say 2 minutes, which is adequate. There is 1 minute for scanning. Then the patient head need to be in the instrument for 1 minute. After 1 minute, the system has achieved all the data that it needs. Then you can release the patient, and it will take another minute for the algorithm to calculate the results.
Right. And connected question to that is, if you're monitoring the patient for 1 or 2 minutes, how crucial is this? Is this looked into maybe as a time loss for the patient, you know, moving treatment?
No, we don't think so, because during the scan, it has turned out that the medical staff can do other things. I mean, when they are scanning the patients, they can collect the blood pressure, for instance, or maybe blood glucose level, or whatever they want to check, pulse rate or pulse oximetry. So we haven't really seen a time loss. And we are not, we have not designed the instrument to be used continuously during transport. The idea is that you should scan the patient once when you meet the patient at the patient's home or at the site of the incident. And then you get a triage decision, stroke or no stroke. And during the transportation, we have not designed the instrument to be used.
Okay, good, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
One question, please, Jonas. Good morning, first of all. Who would be trained in a, in a medical setup to actually use and interpret the result of the device? Is a specialized nurse? Shall it be a doctor? What do you say? What do you recommend?
Yeah, we say licensed healthcare staff is what we say in our IFU, and that can be anything from a paramedic to a registered nurse to a doctor of some kind. It should be said that the application is very easy and you don't need to interpret anything, such as an ECG, for instance. You get the result, stroke or no stroke. Then we are now working on an advanced view. We have not released that yet, but that would be available on a working station in the hospital, because when we discuss with doctors, I mean, paramedics and nurses usually wants to get the result, yes or no. They hate everything they want. If they are forced to interpret something, they hate it. Doctors usually need something more background information. So in the advanced view that we haven't released yet, it will be a probability figure on antenna, so they can actually see the probability and add that in their telemedicine support to the pre-hospital unit. But it's very easy application, no interpretation for the time being. The only thing you need to do is be able to read yes or no on a tablet PC screen. Basically, that's that's pretty much it today.
Thank you. Thank you. And just one other question, please, Jonas. When do you think you'll have the capability of deciphering whether it's a hemorrhagic or an occlusion stroke? Is it in a matter of months, or there's a lot of regulatory and studies to be finalized before that?
Yeah, it will be a longer process than month. So that much I can tell you. But exactly how long it will be, it's very hard to say now, because we are aware as a company that this will be a major step, and we are doing everything we can to speed the process up. However, there are only 10 to 15% of the total amount of stroke patients that actually are bleedings. So the patients are not very frequent, and that is why it takes some time. And sometimes those patients are particularly unwell, so you can't include them in the study. They are excluded for that reason. But we, as a company in the position we are doing everything we can to get our hands on all the European fundings for studies that we possibly can at the moment. And we are in application process of a couple of revenue streams, funding streams right now. We are in discussions with a couple of key opinion leaders in Europe and in the UK. So we are doing everything we can to get the data points we need. But how long it will take, I mean, it's a major interest for us as a company. I would prefer it to happen tomorrow. I don't know if that was a good answer to your question, but it's only the answer I can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jonas. This is Bernd from Integra. We are in Southeast Asia, actually. Since you are a startup, we often see prioritization. You mentioned that you launch in Europe and you work in Australia. Do you have any priorities in that, or are you open also to the Southeast Asia markets as well? And then the next question that often comes up on startups: do you have enough scalability also for the manufacturing of the products at this stage?
We actually have a company in China. It's a mailbox company, Medfield China. We do have today. We are not very active there. But as you mentioned, we are in Australia. We are also discussing with the Middle East. So we are open to go to markets where we currently don't have a regulatory approval. I think the key to this is to find the right partner on the right market. I mean, if you find a partner in Southeast Asia that we can work together with and do this, enter the market in a business-orientated way, we are very open to do that. But as a small company, you probably understand, it goes without saying to this auditorium here, that we have spent a lot of money in getting the MDR regulation, and of course, the Europe is prioritized to get leverage from the investment already made, the very heavy investment on the MDR market. But with that said, we are definitely open to opportunistic market as well, if we can find a partner that is willing to share the risk in a reasonable way with us.
Okay, yeah, I think we will get in touch with you, because that's what we actually do, usually bring companies into the markets, in particular also on the regulatory and then later sales and marketing side. Okay.
Absolutely. And I can also add to that since the product is very uncomplicated, there is not a large clinical application and training to be done here for this patient to be used on patient. It's quite easy. I mean, we do not need to spend the product specialist for 2 weeks in order to get healthcare staff to learn how to do this. This is something that you can be trained on in a very short amount of time. So I think it's quite suitable actually for entering markets outside the travel distance, so to say.
Okay, thanks a lot.